Hello and welcome. There was a time where I was pro-Israel and anti-Palestine, and the reason I changed is because of these guys. We've seen them everywhere. The deep
이 사람 때문에 제가 바뀌었습니다.
in show, Five Pillars, Islam Channel, Al Jazeera, and much more. They are Orthodox Jews who argue that Zionism is not Judaism and that Palestine should be free. These are the Neturei Karta. Whenever they appear online, all the videos are flooded with comments of love and support coming from Muslims, which would debunk any kind of narrative that, yeah, Muslims and Jews, they just want to kill each other because it's written in the Torah and the Quran and stuff. So I first saw them when I came.
네, 이들을 이해한다면은 우리가 무슬림과 유대인들이 서로 뭐 죽을 때까지 싸워야 된다 이런 얘기를 더 이상 듣지 않을 겁니다. 뭐 꾸란과 토라의 얘기를 들으면서 서로 때를 죽여야 된다든지 이런 얘기를 더 이상 못 하게 되겠죠.
To London in 2013, and I was tasked with filming a pro-Palestinian demonstration, and then they were on the top of a bus, and I was wondering, who the hell are these guys? Because when I embraced Islam, I didn't understand anything about Israel and Palestine. At best, I would say, I don't know, but it's a complex issue, as so many people say. I would believe that Israel were the good guys and Palestine was just a terrorist state. Many people argue about the utility and the use of these online debates we see about these demonstrations, about even making videos about this. Activism takes many shapes and forms. Just the fact of seeing them changed my perception and led me to research much more deeper into the issues that are going on. Follow me in this investigative journey to know, who are these guys? What are their arguments? And where do they come from in the first place? And how are they even perceived in the wider Jewish communities?
It is true, it is a fact that Jews lived and flourished in the Muslim and Arab lands.
So this video is taken from the Dean Show because I found it is the most concise video you can get on the internet with most of the arguments. All the links in the description. First, if we investigate visually what's happening there, one may think it's a very strong signposting, meaning that he appears very visibly Orthodox Jewish, but then as a badge, he's got the Palestinian flag and he's got the Israeli flag with the forbidden sign inside it. Usually, when I see such strong signposting, it would raise red flags with me. But at the same time, I think, is very much aware that lots of people wrongly associate Judaism and Jews with Israel and the aggressive policies. And this is why he has to make such a strong visual statement in the first place.
They went to these Arab and Muslim lands to escape persecution from the Crusades, from the Inquisition.
They were actually babysitting each other's kids. So if you're leaving a kid with someone, your own, flesh and blood, your joy of your heart, this is not your enemy.
The most precious of the possession that a person has. It's what God gave a person. They have many Jews who are alive today to thank God, and they lived in the old courtyards in old Jerusalem
to testify.
And they could, although unfortunately Zionism and the Zionists try constantly to vilify the Muslim people and try to recreate a scenario of as if we have some deep embedded religious conflict and hate.
So he makes an historical argument that back in the days, Jews and Muslims and Christians used to live in peace and that they would babysit each other babies.
네, 그들이 박해를 피해서 팔레스타인에 왔을 때 무슬림들이 유대인들의 아이를 돌봐주고 유대인들은 무슬림들의 아이를 돌봐주고 서로 그렇게 정말 깊은 끈끈한 관계였다는 것을 보여주고 있습니다.
Historically, the Jews came to Muslim lands to escape persecutions from the Christians. And from there, he argues that Zionism came to vilify Muslims, and I would say more exactly Arabs, because Christian Arabs are second-class citizens in Israel.
Now, what's the difference between Judaism and Zionism?
Yeah. With God's help, the Judaism is a religion. It is a covenant that Jewish people made some 3,000 years ago on Mount Sinai to be subservient.
네, 유대교는 3,000년 전에 시나이산에서 맺은 하나님과의 언약이라는 얘기입니다.
To God and to follow the laws of the Torah. One of the statements is that in Hebrew it says, Mahu racham afatu teracham. Just as God is compassionate, you should be compassionate. Zionism is a mere 100-odd years. It was a movement of Jews who were estranged from the Torah, who detested the Torah, and tried to transform this Judaism into Erzatz Judaism, a new Judaism, which is pure nationalism, material concept of having an army, Olympic team, and to be a nation proud amongst other nations, totally removing in its essence the concept of godliness, removing God from the equation, hijacked the whole Judaism to legitimize and to put a facade of that it's kosher, that it's godly, what they're doing, when in truth it contradicts Judaism.
So can you be
시오니즘은 유대교에서 하나님을 뺀 굉장히 세속적인 운동이라는 거죠. 그래서 토라를 굉장히 왜곡해서 해석하고, 그리고 굉장히 순수 민족주의에 가까운 유대인들이 최고라는 그런 사상에 도취된 사람들이 만든 사상이 바로 시오니즘이라는 얘기입니다.
can you be Jewish and an atheist?
Of course not. It's
인터뷰어의 질문은 이제 저 남자분의 질문은 유대인이고 무신론자가 될 수 있는 질문이었어요.
ridiculous that Judaism is belief in God. That's what it's.
그래서 이 유대인이 답하기를 유대교에서 신이라는 것을 빼면은 아무 말이 성립되지 않는다고 얘기합니다.
all about a covenant with God. It's not a nationalism. It's not some type of a country that you can be.
네, 좀 이게 트랜스레이션이 잘못 됐는데요. 유대교에서 신은 절대 뺄 수 없는 존재고, 그래서 민족주의가 아니라는 거죠.
Democrat, you can be a Marxist or something. Well, Zionism is exactly that. They were Marxists and they claimed to be Democrats, and they proudly.
시오니스트들은 정말 정치하던 사람들이었어요. 그러니까 민주당원이었던 분도 있고, 막스, 그러니까 공산주의를 지지했던 사람도 있고요.
claim that you don't have to be a practicing Jew, and
그러니까 유대교를 실천할 필요가 없다고 자랑스럽게 얘기하는 굉장히 세속적인 사람들입니다.
to be a good Jew as long as you're supporting the state. So that in and of itself shows the heresy and the blasphemy in what this is.
And then
국가 자체를 찬양하는 것은 신성모독이라는 거죠.
he goes on making religious arguments that sound very Muslim in a way, where, you know, talking about God as Rahma, which is the same root in Hebrew, so being a mercy, being compassionate. And he says that Zionism has basically hijacked Judaism to serve its nationalist agenda. Zionism is a form of nationalism which is very secular. In a way, this is what some fringe groups have also done with Islam, saying then they're on a sacred mission. And a very interesting point saying that you cannot be a Jew and an atheist, while many would consider being Jewish also from the perspective of ethnicity. He basically is just like some very radical Muslims who would argue that you can only be a Muslim if you practice your religion completely. All the videos show that how the Israeli government, the police, and the military have again used force against their own citizens, against Orthodox Jewish people, and which is very well documented against, you know, Black Hebrews, Yemeni Jews, Sephardic Jews in the Israeli society. They are not as equal as, you know, those who are secular and very rich and established.
In fact, they demonstrate daily. When they demonstrate and they see children get, we never carry arms. We're not military. They get beaten. Old men get assassinated. Rabbis.
But let's focus on what is the group he belongs to, the Neturei Karta. Within the mainstream Jewish organizations across the world, they are considered as fringe, sometimes considered as extremists, sometimes even considered as terrorists. Some people don't even consider them as Jews.
Which means they're an extreme ultra-Orthodox Jewish group. They're the same as ISIS, really, in religion. They're not considered amongst the Jews to be Jews, but they take it to such an extent, and they have a very, very, very bad reputation. If they could, they would strap bombs around themselves and blow each other up.
The Neturei Karta means the guardians of the city, if you translate it. They are historically descendants of Hungarian and Lithuanian Jews who then settled in Jerusalem in the 19th century. So they are Haredi Jews, which means roughly, you know, considered as Orthodox Jews. The Neturei Karta are opposed to violence, and they advocate the peaceful dismantlement of the Israeli state, just that. The movement itself was founded around 1938 in Jerusalem as a splinter group of a bigger party, which was called Agudat Israel. which is again a whole Orthodox party founded in Poland in 1912. The party, the wider party Agudat Israel, was an Orthodox party strongly opposed to Zionism. But this until 1948, where they succumbed to the pressure from the Zionist movement and then had to align themselves because they thought that aligning with the Zionist cause would benefit them more on the long term. Some people would have considered them as having sold out. So they argue that the main causes of the divisions we see there is because of Zionism, which argue that, Britain has its role to play in that, the US has its role to play in that, when Britain partitioned the land or suggested the partition, whatever. So they rely on an interpretation of the Torah and the Talmud, which is the Jewish law, that Jews are forbidden to recreate a state. They consider it as a rebellion against God, because there would be, according to them, there would be a Jewish state only when the Messiah comes, which means basically at the end of times. Haredi Jews, or the Orthodox one, they don't have to serve in the IDF. They are opposed to the idea of voting and participating in the state of Israel in any shape or form. However, it is also important to remember
that it is a socially and economically marginal group in Israel. They are usually among the poorest in the society, and although there is a Haredi party in Israeli politics, they are far from being the majority. It is considered by, I would say, the mainstream Jewish communities as a fringe group. To make an analogy, it would almost be for mainstream Sunni Muslims if it was a group of Ahmadis, let's say, or Ismailis. And a big chunk of Jewish societies would see them just like Muslims would consider this Imam Tawhidi, which I showed in the previous video. The thing is, religion can be interpreted in many different ways. And I can understand why some people hearing their arguments would consider this as blasphemy. And they are not the only group of Jews who are opposed to the occupation of Israel. I think it's important to know that. They're just maybe the most vocal and most visible. You have groups such as Shomer Emunim, Satmar, Malakim, and some other groups around the globe like Jewish Voice for Peace, American Council for Judaism, which also is a very old organization. But it's also important to remember that many Jews and many Israelis, Orthodox or not, and it's all over the spectrum, are really seeing a problem with the oppressive policies of the Israeli government. And I think one of the main arguments actually has been to highlight the contradictions between the narrative of the Israeli state and the actions of the Israeli state. Because while the Israeli state appropriates religion to justify its endeavors, they show that, they don't even respect the basics of you should not lie, you should not kill, you should not steal, and criticizing the Israeli government for what it is. It is a nationalist government which is secular, and they are very good at by showing a mirror through their own oppression, their own marginalization, that the government doesn't actually care about all its Jewish citizens equally. They are also aware that their mere existence has a very strong symbolic power, meaning that although it will not change the situation overnight, at least, they know that by making themselves vocal and visible, it will attract and intrigue people just like myself, who didn't know much about the situation, just by seeing them was intrigued and digged deeper into, okay, so what do they stand for? What is their message? Some people argue that demonstrations and TV debates are useless, but it takes just one person who may be on the fence or looking for knowledge, and just, seeing them, for them to do some more research. And if that person is in a position of power to actually change things on the ground, so they have accomplished their mission, feel free to look up more into their history and all the groups I've mentioned who also are part of the anti-Zionist movement, because I didn't know all that. It's a very old history. Because again, my intentions is to show that history is not black and white. This is why I'm interested to these fringe groups of the society, because I just find it fascinating, the dynamics. But I hope it was useful. Thank you again for watching, and again, take care of yourselves and each other.
Israel's ground operation of
네, 이분은 영국에서 이제 계시는 분이신데 무슬림이셨네요. 저는 오늘 처음 알았는데요. 이분이 이제 정통 유대교인들이 말하는 진정한 유대교와 그다음에 시오니스트와의 차이를 얘기해 주셔서 이거를 제가 번역을 해드렸고요. 네, 자동 번역이 잘 돼 있어가지고 감사드립니다. 어쨌든 이 내용에서는 말씀드리는 게 뭐냐면 이제 유대인들, 그러니까 지금 시오니스트, 이스라엘을 만든 사람들은 종교적인 사람들이 아니라는 거예요. 굉장히 세속적인 사람이고 마르크스를 지지하거나 민주주의를 지지하는, 그러니까 굉장히 세속화된 사람인 거고 종교를 단지 이용하고 있을 뿐인 거죠. 실제로 유대인들은 팔레스타인 땅에서 평화적으로 살았었습니다. 그들이 박해를 피해서 유럽 사람들이 유대인들 되게 싫어했었잖아요. 박해를 피해서 왔을 때 무슬림들은 환영해줬어요. 서로 아이들을 보살펴주면서 평화롭게 살고 있었는데 그 땅에 갑자기 이 정치 집단들이 와서 나라를 세우겠다고 하고 유대인들로만 이루어진 땅을 만들겠다고 주장을 했죠. 이게 처음에 말이 안 됐었는데 이제 영국이 그들의 손을 들어주고, 영국은 이제 유대인들이 나가길 바랬으니까요, 자신들의 땅에서. 그래서 그들은 잃을 게 없었죠, 그죠? 유대인들이 다 나가주기만 한다면은 그들한테는 좋은 거고, 유대인들이 이스라엘 땅에 옴으로써 중동 지역에 이제 평화가 깨지게 되면은 그것 또한 그들이 좋았다고 판단했을 것 같아요. 영국이 나가고 나서는 이제 그 뒤에 이스라엘 사람들, 이제 시오니스트자들이 팔레스타인 땅에 살던 이 정통 유대인들도 자신들의 반대하면은 억압을 했어요. 그리고 팔레스타인에 살고 있던 기독교인들도 억압을 했고 집을 빼앗았습니다. 자신들의 시오니스트주의에 동참하지 않으면은 모든 사람들을 다 억압했어요. 이 문제는 종교 문제가 아닙니다. 이 문제는 땅의 문제예요. 땅을 아무 이유 없이 뺏으려고 하는 사람. 그 핑계가 종교일 뿐이지 사실 그 종교도 제대로 해석한 게 아니거든요. 토라를 왜곡 해석해서 그 땅을 뺏고 싶다는 핑계를 삼은 거죠. 그걸 알기 때문에 유대교를 정말 사랑하는 유대인들은 이걸 인정할 수가 없는 겁니다. 도둑질을 하지 말라고 가르쳤잖아요, 하느님께서. 근데 그거를 도둑질했죠. 그리고 사람을 죽이지 말라고 가르치잖아요, 토라에서도. 사람을 죽이잖아요. 그러니까 유대인들은 이걸 인정할 수가 없는 거예요, 진정한 유대인들은. 그런데 이제 세속주의적 유대인들, 이제 시오니스트들은 이런 유대인들을 테러리스트로 비난하고 또 억압하는 겁니다. 그러니까 스파날라, 이거는 종교의 문제가 아니에요. 영토의 문제예요. 땅을 뺏으려고 하는 자와 그리고 그 땅을 지키려고 하는 사람, 그 사람들 간에 지금 분쟁인 겁니다. 네, 감사합니다. 살람 알레이쿰.